Welcome again to BrandedLibrary.tv, and this time we're keeping it in the US with Kentucky, not just Kentucky, this is bourbon, and with Rob Hutchins. What are we talking about?
Mostly bourbon, Flavian. But we do 5 distinct mash bills at Heaven Hill, which is a lot considering to switch from one to the other, you literally have to shut everything you're doing down, bring it to a complete halt, just scour everything out from end to end. To start over to do something as unique as the straight wheat whiskey there, of which we're the only producer of that variant of whiskey in the United States. It is recognized in the regs. It does specifically say wheat whiskey, and it defines it like it would define bourbon as having a minimal volume of 51% of wheat. This happens to be red winter wheat, which is all grown in Kentucky. We're very proud of it. It's about 38% of corn there in the middle, and then the rest is malt barley. And you know what? The real interesting tie-in that I think people can really see this as a touchstone into bourbon. All the processes are the same. It's a low-proof distillation. It's distilled by law to below 160 proof, which is very critical. It also requires, to call it straight, that we use a new barrel, and we can only put it in the barrel at 125 proof or less. So it's essentially the same 3 ingredients as a wheated bourbon, of which I know you sell some wheated bourbon here in the Brandy Library.
Yep.
You know the big brands, the most popular ones: Maker's Mark, Weller, Old Fitzgerald, which we make at Heaven Hill, which we're very proud of. So essentially it's the same 3 ingredients in the same process, just with an explosion of wheat compared, you know, about 3 times what the average wheated bourbon would have.
What represents the core of Heaven Hill?
Our flagship is the Evan Williams Black Label here.
All right.
This also happens to be the 2nd largest brand sold in the world of bourbon. And
that's quite impressive.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's a fun fact to throw out there. It's quietly and just, you know, almost doggedly risen to that, you know, that elevated place of sales. And you know, I think it's been a study of really doing it the right way. It's all about quality. It's high proof for its price range. When you talk about the price range of this product, just the way we're trained as consumers these days, maybe some people they can't comprehend how that could be a good or great product just because of the price that we charge.
Yeah.
So it's a unique problem to have. It's not really a problem, but I think it scares some people away, and I invite everyone to try this bourbon. It's about 75% of what we do at Heaven Hill is going to be the core mash bill here, and I'll just turn that sideways there where you can see it a little better. That's going to be greater than 75% corn, and of course to be bourbon, the minimum is 51. In reality, almost everyone's at least 70%.
Yeah.
There's one lone exception to that that's just a very, very small production that I don't even mention a brand name. But
and now if I see that single barrel, can I just say that this is your standard Evan Williams on steroids? What's special about that single barrel?
Those barrels are hand selected by Parker and Craig Beam, and they are the absolute best of a given year. And you'll notice the vintage dating.
Yeah, that's 2001 for this one.
Yes, so you know that signifies that if you turn the bottle around, you'll notice, possibly not on this bottle, but on the one that actually had whiskey in it, that we will handwrite a set of dates there. Yeah. That's very rare. If you go around looking at single barrel bottlings, a lot of times they'll tell you the bottled on date, which is pretty irrelevant unless you know the barreled on date, because it's impossible to construe the age unless you have both. Yeah. So that's a rarity, both dates.
Barreled on and
yes. Yeah. So the vintage is claimed as the year that we make the year and the date that we make the White Dog and actually introduce it in the barrel, and then this is aged. Usually 9+ years, just before it turns 10. Okay. These barrels become ready, and we'll do about 1,000 in a vintage for a year's time. It's really a celebrated project for us. It started in 1986 as a vintage. We've done 15 now with the 2001. It's collected 5 Whiskey of the Year awards. You know, it's just done. It's been very well received. People like it because of the vintage dating. Yeah. We will sell every bottle of every vintage that we make, so it's impossible to go back and create, for instance, more 99 or 2000.
how relevant it is to see vintage. What made that one and say 2000 very special from the 2001 and so on? What's the big difference?
The big difference would be the beginning year and the ending year of that 10-year or that 9+ year aging cycle. And that doesn't sound like much. And you know, at the end of the day, a lot of people ask questions. For instance, we have 49 rack houses that we store bourbon in, and they're the traditional old school, you know, very crude structures with a very thin skin that get very hot and very cold.
Yeah, yeah.
And people ask, if you do this 75% of the time, how do you get these variations? And this is a case study of that, because through the years, these come from fewer and fewer floors of certain rack houses. It's just that, you know, it's almost like Parker and Craig know how age is going to affect that distillate in that barrel. And it's just, it really is an amazing thing to see the regularity with which, you know, we get barrel samples. You've done the barrel sampling.
Yeah,
it's funny to see how many floors are repeated of the same rack houses.
Same very product to start with.
The same as
but
this.
In different rig houses.
Correct. Correct.
With
49 of them. Yeah, and you know the whole theory or belief in microclimate and how important that is. Each one of those 49 buildings is a microclimate. Technically, each floor within each of those buildings is a microclimate. And really, from the walls inward are very microclimates.
Yeah,
you know, by the time you get into the first and second floors on the inside, you're sort of in a cocoon. You're sort of insulated in there. This one in a batch would be, you know, maybe 800 or 900 barrels. That would be a batch for us. And again, you know, keep in mind, this is what we do most of the time. So when we call something small batch at Heaven Hill, you know, you're going from 800 or 900 or maybe even more. You're going down to, like in the case of the Bernheim, you're probably talking about 15, 20 barrels.
Yeah, that's small.
That are being hand-picked, you know, just very strategically picked. So there's no law that dictates the use of that term, which is small batch. It's basically a marketing term.
Now we know that sometimes small batch can get quite big.
It can be, because really the government doesn't restrict the use of that term. It's not a regulation. And we give Book or No credit with actually saying those words is what most people agree happened first. And shall we?
We shall.
Outstanding. And of course, very important to our laws of production and our standards of identity is, I'd mentioned the low-proof distillation already. That's very important. We're I believe, the only whiskey tradition in the world. Cheers.
Cheers, Rob.
That defines low-proof distillation as law. And 160 or below. 160 That's way below, like even Scotch and Irish whiskey, and Canadian as well.
Higher, yeah.
And you know what, we feel like that's going to leave the essence or the spirit of these ingredients in there. And of course, looking at the color of this, this is beautiful. Beautiful color.
What is your wood policy on Evan Williams? Are you using the same charring, the same kind of barrels?
We are.
On all of your whiskeys?
We do.
All right.
Yeah, and it's a 55-second direct burn. I believe you've seen it live. Yeah. It's quite impressive. It is. It is. Toasted heads. Or not toasted heads, I'm sorry. We char the heads. You saw that also in play. Not everyone does that.
Yeah, sort of pizza.
Yeah, that was the one job there that I could do probably. I'd get burned a lot, but I could probably pull that one off. So anyway, yeah, you know, that's something that I've heard Parker say that I really didn't, you know, listening to him, is incredible. Just the history of 51 years and following his father. Parker Beam is who I'm discussing, our master distiller, one of our beams that's on hand now. He says something that's really, it's very important, but it really frames everything up. You know, he says we have to make every barrel the same. You know, we put everything we have into every single barrel. It starts with our new make whiskey. I mean, if it's not good, it doesn't matter if you wait, you know, 5, 6, or 7 years or just under 10 years or 12 years or 18 years, if it's not good to start with, it's not gonna get a lot better over time. You have to have that good distillate from the onset. So that's the mantra there at Heaven Hill. It's like every barrel could end up being, for instance, a Parker's. You know, you never know. I mean, they all.
It must be a lot of work, because since it is the same recipe, the same mash bill, it is the same wood that it is stored in, then you have to put the same thing in the bowl over and over, because when you love your Evan Williams, you want the same. And that must take a lot of, well, understanding in which rack houses you will find this kind of whiskey that will be placed in Evan Williams, and that one, and this one, and so on. Is there some sort of a computerized system to look for that? Do you know where those barrels will be already, or is it just a lot of tasting?
It's not computerized. You know the function of a master blender. This is similar to that. You know, like I said, when you get up into the vicinity of pulling 800 or 900 barrels out, you really need a range. But what they're going to do is you're going to have the really great ones and you're going to have the good ones. There aren't any bad ones, I will say, but they're all going to even out. You're going to get to your flavor profile. This is exceptionally consistent. All of these whiskeys that you see here, we mentioned low proof distillation. We're very proud. It's a small box that we put ourselves in. It really limits us.
All of the other distilleries have to do the same.
Right. It is law. It is law for American, the American whiskey types.
But will you be distilling right below 160, or some other distillery?
We go just below 140.
All right.
Okay. And that's a pretty common proof to distill to. And part of that is just the people that were doing it a lot and really were considered to be the in-the-know people. That's what they taught. And once column stills enter the scene, and you stop taking these smooth bore shots and you start doing these rifle shots where you can really control everything, everybody starts doing it probably between 130 and 140. But the other big thing is we can never add color or flavor to these products that is not naturally derived out of that new barrel. And having to use that new barrel, that's a game changer. There's two pretty interesting theories on, well, there's more than two, but there's two that are probably the most well-known theories about how that new barrel law came into effect. And it was sometime in the middle of the 1930s. It was actually a New Deal type law. And of course, thinking about the jobs that would guarantee, that cooperage industry, it's basically a tree to barrel. You've seen the process. Think about the people that go out and do the logging and all the jobs there, the transport, all the milling that's done with the wood, then the artisan work that kicks in with making the barrel, just everything involved. There's well over 1 million barrels a year produced. And that law is why. Because if that law wasn't in effect, we would probably be using used barrels just because of the economy of scale. And it would make these whiskeys different. It really would. The Shapiro family owns Heaven Hill, and the company was founded late 1934, I believe, December 13th, 1934, right after Prohibition ends. And they go, and they had been in completely different business, and they had been successful in the dry goods business and on some department stores in a lot of small towns in Kentucky, and saw an opportunity and went right to the Beam family to hire on as the expertise of that dynastic family, that's just been so involved and so important to American distilling in general. But it's a family-owned aspect. The fact that the Shapiros are still so involved in everything that goes on. I mean, they're not absentee owners at all. They're in the office every day. They're usually the first in and the last out. They're very devoted to this. This is their life and their passion. Beans are the same way, so it's the perfect marriage of in partnership. And the rest is history. Like I said, we've quietly become the second largest holder and producer of bourbon in the world.